We're just launching it here. We just delivered the first units of that at the beginning of this year. Companies like DHL and Merck and NFI and Auto are buying them.
Now, Rob, when it rolls, tell us what we'll be seeing.
Great. So, we've introduced two products to the world. In 2020, we launched Spot, and you're seeing Purina's version of Spot here. Spot is a mobile inspection platform. It goes around the factory, taking thermal measurements, acoustic measurements, reading gauges, making sure that the factory is operating in a healthy and safe state. And this ends up being really the launching use case. Spot's a multi-purpose robot, but this is the use case that we think is really scalable and that's going to grow. And so we have customers like Chevron, Ontario Power Generation, Anheuser-Busch, Purina, folks like that.
And next, I believe we're going to see Stretch.
Yeah, so Stretch
You have a knack for naming them, I have to say.
Yeah, well, thanks. Tall, right? Stretch is tall.
How tall is Stretch?
It has to reach to the top of a container, a shipping container. So this is going to be a multi-purpose.
So taller than me.
Yeah, it reaches about 10 feet. And there's about 800 million containers moved around the world each year. A lot of them are full of boxes like you see here. This is a back-breaking, repetitive task. And so there's just a ton of boxes to move. And we started with unloading these containers first because it was kind of a nice, safe place to start the robot. It's almost in a cage there. But ultimately, this is going to be a multi-use robot. It's going to do any box-moving task in the warehouse. We're just launching it here. We just delivered the first units of that at the beginning of this year. Companies like DHL and Merck and NFI and Auto are buying them.
Now, Rob, I don't know if you've heard, but we're in a bit of an AI boom right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know, we're wild,
big,
right?
Yeah.
Are we possibly on the precipice of a robotics boom?
I think it's going to be exciting. So, AI is the brain, the robot is the body, and together, I think we're going to build an entirely new industry that's basically going to change business. It's going to change the way we live. So it's going to have a big impact.
Now, to sort of illustrate that point, we actually have a special guest. Spot, if you could please come out.
Yeah, so we brought a Spot robot to demo to you guys today. And today...
Yeah, you can get up, take pictures, go have a moment.
Spot is, normally it would autonomously walk around a factory. Today, Spot is being driven by Hannah Rossi here. But Spot has onboard cameras that lets it see its environment so it knows where... So if it goes on and off this...
Doesn't get stage fright.
Not at all, not at all. But notice how it's coordinating its foot placement with the steps because it sees the steps. So it knows how to adjust its own behavior to the environment. And that's because there's cameras. There's actually 5 cameras all around the robot. And so it builds a local terrain map. And so it knows sort of what it's getting into. And, posing is cute, but it also, if you put a sensor on the back of its body, you can then point that sensor at something in the world. So legs just turn out to be a great way to get around in the world. Now, we happen to have a payload today, an arm. So we can configure this robot with a variety of sensors or tools. Today, we have an arm to show. And because I think the real value of robots comes not only when you have a mobile platform, but when you have something that can do actual work. And so the Spot arm can grab things, open doors, manipulate things. And one of the things we pay attention to is coordinating the motion of the body and the arm together. You and I don't think about it, but we can walk and move and touch something. And look, I'm walking around and still touching this front end of the arm easily. So doing all of that coordination takes a lot of work. And let's see, I'll show one little simple task. I have a little toy here. And
it is a stress cube, is my understanding.
The whole idea of these robots is, while Hannah's controlling it, she's just giving it sort of high-level gestures about what to do. The robot is managing its own motion, and it's actually going to pick up the ball itself. So it looks like it's going to miss on the first try. So it's not flawless. Robots, there's no threat of them taking over, I assure you. But they do have to manage an awful lot of their own motion in order for them to be useful, to adapt to the environment, whether the environment change, if a box is in the way today and then it was tomorrow, we're going to miss twice in a row. Well, anyway.
How often does that happen?
Not that often, but sometimes. So I think the lights in here maybe confuse it a little bit. But we just launched the door opening module for this. So now the robot can go through a factory and see the door handle, open it, and help it move through that space. So I think we'll maybe stop there. Maybe we'll show them one little fun gate. Yeah, we do the dancing. The dancing is not for pay or pay work. But I do think that there's an inherent interest, right? The robots are interesting for reasons that, we sort of have been looking at living, moving things our whole lives. And so it's sort of easy to emotionally identify with something that moves around in a world like that. So I think we'll let this sit down at this point and we can proceed with...
Spot, sit.
Yeah.
You're giving it the command?
Hannah...
Are you giving it commands?
Hannah's basically saying dance, but that's about it.
Yes, but it manages its own movement. Now, I have to say, the robotics nerd in me thinks this is so cool. But the financial journalist in me sits here and says, is this scalable?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So to make this business scale, there has to be a use case that is scalable, that actually provides value to somebody. So as I said, with Spot, we think that value is in industrial inspection, basically keeping a factory up and running. Mm-hmm. But it also, so there has to be value in a use case. The robot has to be able to technically do it. Mm-hmm. And then there has to be, is it scalable? Is there enough of it? Mm-hmm. And so getting all three of those things right is actually tough because you have to cross the chasm. We're building a new industry here, mm-hmm. and you got to cross the chasm with a high value use case that is scalable, that's going to pay for the development of these machines, which is still, this is an expensive thing to develop. There's
How
software.
expensive?
Well, at least $100 million, frankly, to launch a product because you have to iterate on the hardware, there's software. The first prototype, you're not going to be able to deliver because that's not going to be reliable enough. And so it takes time. Honestly, the folks who are, there's a bunch of little companies standing up now, they say they're going to launch a product, a humanoid, in 2 years. I think they're blowing smoke. It's going to be 5 or 6 years.
Elon Musk has also actually been talking about humanoid robots as well.
And he has, and
also smoke?
Well, let's see. I think he's been watching too many science fiction movies. I think the fear-mongering is a little bit overblown. But you also have to take Elon seriously, right? He has a factory behind him, so if he can build the robot, he can just be his own consumer and use it. They will know how to scale manufacturing because you're only going to get these things to be affordable as if you can build enough of them and get the cost down. And they have the software wherewithal. On the other hand, he's saying things that don't make sense to me.
Like what?
We're going to purposely make the robot slow and weak because that's going to make it safe. I don't get that part. You know what? You want to make robots that are strong and powerful, and that's the only way they're going to be useful. And so I think that's just we're definitely going in the opposite direction.
Now, what are the use cases for Spot that you're most excited about? You mentioned Nestle, Purina, for
Yeah, so industrial inspection in the process industry is, I think, a huge and scalable market. But there's other really important use cases out there. We've had Spot at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. It's been at 3 Mile Island. It's been at Chernobyl. Anytime you have a dangerous situation where you really don't want to put a person in there, send a robot for sure. We have public safety officials, police using it. If they have to serve a warrant to a murder suspect, you don't want the cop opening the door, right? That is a very dangerous environment. And so having a robot mediate that first contact with a potential suspect is actually going to be safer for folks. And so I think there's a whole variety of potential use cases. We definitely want to build all of our robots to be platforms and have multiple use cases. But again, you got to have that launching use case that gets you across the chasm.
Now, we may be expecting too much from our robots, perhaps, but what do the risks look like?
Well, I don't see much risk here. I think the real
Godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, very concerned about AI-powered battle robots. The apocalyptic view, not for you.
I don't see that. I think AI is going to enhance the capability of these robots. But they're tools that we are building, They are going to have off switches. I just really don't see the revolution happening. It's not something that I worry about. I think I've been developing robots for 30 years. We struggle. We work so hard to get them to do something reasonably well in repeatable fashion. We're not about to take off.
The apocalyptic view is not in our immediate future, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got to start with the cubes, I guess.
Right. They couldn't pick up the cube.
But one of the other things that often comes up when people talk about robots is the idea that robots will take jobs. What is your view on the relationship between human jobs and robotics?
So, every new technology has changed work, and robotics will be the same. But the jobs this robot is doing is it's a job that frankly is so boring, people don't do it very well. Do you want the job where you're walking through the factory with a clipboard recording temperatures and pressures and gauges repetitively every day, multiple times a day? Basically, people suck at that job. They'll either not do it or they'll do it incorrectly. And you really want to reserve those skilled technicians for fixing the equipment, not finding the problem. And so the robot's actually going to help enhance the productivity of those people. And stretch, I showed unloading those containers. It can be 120 degrees in the summer inside that container. That's a brutal place to work. So what's really going to happen is the people who used to unload those containers are now going to operate the robot. We have the concept of a robot wrangler job, which is, it doesn't take an advanced degree, but the person who used to work in that warehouse is now going to enhance their skills by learning how to work with technology and manage robots. And our customers like DHL and Merck are excited that that is actually going to attract talent to them.
Do you believe that in the end robotics could even be a driver of economic growth?
Absolutely, because I think it can enhance overall human productivity.
So is it the sort of thing that it's an efficiency game in the end?
Well, part of it's efficiency, but look what's happening demographically. The rich world, the population is already declining, right? China, Japan, Korea, they don't have birth rates that are actually replacing their current population. We're going to need robots to keep up the production, and people don't want to do some of the work that these robots are doing now.
Now, in terms of what's next for Boston Dynamics, what happens now? You have Spot, you have Stretch. What's the next hill you're going to climb?
So our next, the robot that we've been developing for years, our humanoid Atlas, I think there's a real role for a two-handed mobile manipulation robot out
What's that role? What does that look like?
Well, I think it could be in manufacturing, some place where you have more dexterous manipulation. So, there's been robots in automotive factories for years, but, they only do a single task in a very highly controlled environment. If you could build a robot that could pick up anything, anywhere, you could then start to do this heavy lifting in a wide variety of ways, either in logistics or in manufacturing, or maybe getting your baggage to you faster than the airlines can do it right now.
Yeah, and now we have about 30 seconds left. What does the future of robotics look like, and will these be in our homes anytime in my lifetime?
Within your
my lifetime.
I think it's going to take between 10 and 20 years before these things are in your homes.
20 is actually not as long as I was expecting.
Long, right?
No, that's not that long at all.
These are expensive right now, and we're starting with industrial applications because you have to, have enough economic activity to warrant the price. But as we get better and better at these, and we generalize them, they're going to get cheaper. The capability is going to be there, and I want one in my home eventually.